everyone. We'll call our meeting to order. First item, we'll have Senator Hawk introduce his pages. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Young People in Government Week for me. I have 3 outstanding pages from Anthony Middle School and their dad here, and I want them to stand up as I introduce your name. Maitland Woods, Grace Seal, Claire Seal, and Dad Scott Seal, who was an intern back when he was slightly younger. So could you welcome them to the Capitol, and I'm hoping they have a great day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawk. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes here, and then we'll get started on our budget report outs. Do we have any bill introductions? Seeing none. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We'll skip down the agenda to the corrections and public safety, and we'll start out with the KBI. Must have it stuck together. That's what it is. Out of order. I found it. Oh, there she is. Senator McGinn, we have you first, but if you want to wait a second, I could do one of the other ones or whatever's up to you.
I'll start with the Board of Nursing.
Okay.
And just to announce to people who are chairs, and their meetings start at 8:30, and if they don't leave at 8 or 9:20, then the next committee is late, and then the next one is late. Anyway, in the olden days, people were supposed to quit at 9:20, but everybody seems to think they have a full hour. So, all right, got that off my chest. Now we can begin. Looks like we're going to start with the Board of Nursing. So significant items in the agency include new software module and software upgrade. Governor recommends expenditures of $3.4 million, all from special revenue funds, increase of $24,179 or 0.7% above the agency's estimate. Significant items in the governor's recommendation include the following. It's the nurse pay adjustment. Governor recommends $24,179 from the Board of Nursing Fee Fund to implement the 24/7 pay plan recommended by the Spark Task Committee and approved by the State Finance Council. It is a temporary pay increase. The committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. And then on 2023, again, to add to the software, the licensing software upgrade. The upgrade is estimated at $160,000, but $43,592 was already budgeted in the 23 amount. Therefore, the remaining $116,400 is requested to meet the total funding for this purchase. The governor recommends the expenditure of $3.4 million, all from special revenue fund. This is an increase of $44,900, 1.3% above the estimate. Significant items, again, you have the nurse pay adjustment, and the Committee on Transparency and Ethics concurs with the governor's budget for 2023. There are no questions, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of the Board of Nursing for 2022 and 2023.
Motion and a second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did Spark provide funds to the Board of Nursing? Is that what I'm reading in here?
It says here that Spark approved or recommended and the State Finance Council approved the temporary funding.
I'm wondering, isn't the Board of Nursing financed through fees, licensure fees?
They finance their fees on other items. Excuse me. Yeah. So it's paid for through their fee fund.
So they didn't get Spark money, but they're
Well,
just...
you know, the person on State Finance Council is your chairman sitting next to you, so I'll defer to him.
I believe they did. We didn't deny any of them.
Yeah, I understand. I just find that kind of interesting. I could see how the nurses that are actually practicing needed to get Spark funding because we had a crisis in terms of having people available in hospitals, et cetera. But it would seem strange to me that the Board of Nursing that is financed through licensure fees would get Spark funding. So that just seems odd to me, and I just wanted to see if that was true or not. So thank you.
Seems odd.
Yeah.
Yep.
First time anything's ever seemed odd here. Thank you.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to repeat a question I've heard in this chamber, and that is, what is a temporary pay increase?
Senator McGinn.
Temporary pay increase is to float them until the legislature, decides whether they're going to get one in the budget.
But
Temporary through Spark.
right.
So there you go.
So how long does that last? And
I don't know the exact dates. It goes to how far, do you know? Through 23? Okay, so through 23. So we would have to make a decision in our budget to continue.
so if we go ahead and approve this, then the money that we're approving today, which is $44,000 for 23, would have to be approved in 24 just to keep the nurses at the same level they are today. Is that correct?
We would have to make the decision whether we continue their salaries at a higher level.
Or, okay, thank you.
I think this is all about pay equity and
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Kansas Dental Board. Senator McGinn.
All right, thank you. The Kansas Dental Board for 2022, the agency requests $418,500 from their special revenue funds. No change from the amount approved in 2021. The revised estimate includes three FTEs, which is the same as 2021. Governor concurs with the agency's estimate. Of the $418,000 from the dental board fee fund and the 3 FTEs, the Committee on Transparency and Ethics agrees with the governor's budget recommendations. So we'll move on to 2023. Agency requests $417,000, all from special revenue funds for 2023. No change from the amount in 2021, and a decrease of $1,500 of the special revenue fund. Decrease is attributable to the lower anticipated expenditures for travel-related costs, office supplies, partially offset by an anticipated increase in employee fringe benefits. The revised estimate includes 3 FTEs, which is the same as 2021. Governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate of $417,000, all from the dental board fee fund, 3 FTE positions for 2023. The committee concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following notation. The agency should consider ending the ending balance of the dental board fee fund and whether the reduction on licensure fee is appropriate. The fee funds have been increasing. So I'm sure Kevin will take that back and have that conversation. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the Kansas Dental Board for 2022 and 2023, approved by the committee.
Have a motion, a second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Board of Barbering. Senator McGinn.
All right. Agency estimates revised operating expenditures of $178,073, all from the Board of Barbering Fee Fund in 22. Increase of $19,300 or 12.2% above the amount in 21. This increase in expenditures includes a supplemental request for the computer-based testing contract the agency signed with an outside vendor. For 2022, the agency estimates fees of $12,700 for the CBT contract. Agency's revised estimates also includes a supplemental request for computer leases and domain access of from the Office of Information Technology Services. Has been increased by $2,500. Administrative assistant with the agency will be transitioning to a 32-hour week, up from 24 hours a week after completing their probationary period. This increase in salaries and wages expenses by $3,400. Other notable increases include the supplemental request for attorney fees, which is increased by $1,500 per contract with the Office of Attorney General, and travel expenses that is increased by $1,542. And with that, there we are. Yes, I remember. So that increase in the Attorney General is also that relationship to anytime we increase bids. So sure staff is looking into that for me. Thank you. The governor concurs with the agency's 2022, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation in 2022. For 2023, agency estimates operating expenses $172,800 from the Barbering Fee Board. This increase is $13,678 or 8.6% above the $159,000 approved for 2023. Increase is primarily due to increases in enhancement requests for the CBT contract, which increases fees by $5,800 for 23, and the increase is caused by an enhance in the OITS domain of leasing computers, which is increased by $3,300. And same about the administrative assistant going to 32 hours per week, and the increases by the Attorney General and the contract. Governor concurs with 2023, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation. If there are no questions, I move approval of the Board of Barbering for 2022 and 2023.
We have a motion, a second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Board of Cosmetology.
The board, thank you. The Board of Cosmetology estimates their operating expenses of $1.1 million, all from the cosmetology fee for 2022. Decrease of $17,400 or 1.5% by the approved amount from 2021. Change was entirely driven by a decrease in the agency's contribution for employee fringe benefits, including health care, retirement, and employment compensation. Governor concurs with the agency, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2022. 2023, the agency's estimate is $1.2 million, all from the cosmetology fee. For 23, a decrease of $9,100 or 0.8% below the amount approved in 23. The decrease is due to the $21,000 decrease in expenditures for salary and employee fringe benefits, and offset by $12,500 increase in expenditures for the attorney fees. Governor concurs with the agency's recommendation, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation. There are no questions, Mr. Chairman. I move we approve the Board of Cosmetology for 2022 and 2023.
We have a motion, a second by Senator Clays. Is there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator McGinn. Next, we'll move on to the corrections and public safety, and we'll start out with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. The agency requests a revised estimate of $41.5 million, including $28.1 million SGF in fiscal year 2022. It's an all funds increase of $1.1 million and an SGF decrease of $2,851 from fiscal year 2022. The all funds increase is primarily attributed to increased receipts, expenditures of the federal funds in fiscal year 2022. These additional federal funds included $369,015 in coronavirus emergency supplemental funding, an increase of $393,610 in federal national crime history improvement grant funds, and $354,674 in additional e-citation priority safety federal grants funds. The agency estimated 353.5 FTE positions, which is unchanged from 22. The governor concurs with the agency, and the subcommittee concurs with the governors. The Senate Committee on Ways and Means will also review potential of paying off the forensic science laboratory bonds early. So the whole committee will look at the bond and see if we want to go ahead and try to pay them off. Moving on to 2023. The agency requests $43.1 million, including $30 million SGF for fiscal year 2023. This is an all-fund increase of $1.7 million and an SGF increase of $2.7 million above the 2022 revised estimates. The agency requests enhancements totaling $4 million, all SGF, for recruitment and retention efforts that include professional staff, $918,181, commission personnel, $1.1 million, and forensic scientists, $947,050. The agency requests an enhancement of $1.1 million SGF to restore the agency's previous base budget amount, which was decreased by 4.5% in 2021 as part of the reduced resource measure item adopted by the governor. The agency offset the increase in SGF for enhancement requests by increasing the shrinkage rate for fiscal year 2023. The agency also requested 353.5 FTE positions, unchanged from 2022. The governor recommends $40.2 million, including $28.8 million SGF for fiscal year 2023. The recommendation is a decrease of $3 million or 7.4% below the 23 agency request. This includes the restoration of the $1.1 million SGF, which was reduced from the agency's budget as part of the agency's fiscal 2022 reduced resource budget. The funding will be used to hire 16 FTE positions in investigations and forensic science services. Additionally, the governor recommended $943,925 to be expended from the SGF as opposed to the Kansas Criminal Justice Information System fee fund. The Senate subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendations. Are there questions on 2022 or 2023 budget for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation? Seeing none, I make a motion we accept the subcommittee's report, seconded by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will move on to the Kansas Highway Patrol. The agency requests and fiscal year 2022 revised estimate of $102 million, off from special revenue funds for total agency expenditures. This is a decrease of $326,668, or 3.03% below fiscal year 2022. The decrease is largely due to the agency's revised request for capital improvement expenditures being $462,256 below the amount included in the fiscal year 2021 approved budget. This was partially offset by an additional $135,588 in COVID-19 relief transactions that were not included in the approved amount. The fiscal year 2022 revised estimates is composed of $100.7 million of operating expenditures and a $1.4 million of capital improvement expenditures. Fiscal year 2022 revised estimates include 880 FTE positions, which is no change in the approved number. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $120.1 million, including $18.1 million SGF in fiscal year 2022. This is an increase of $18.1 million, all SGF above the agency's 2022 revised estimates. The increase is due to recommending the agency's fiscal year 2023 enhancement request for law enforcement aircraft replacement in fiscal year 2022. The governor also recommends funding this request with SGF money rather than through the Kansas Highway Patrol Operations Fund, as was included in the agency's enhancement request. The governor concurs with the agency's fiscal 2022 revised estimates for capital improvement expenditures. Significant items in the governor's recommendation include the following. Replacement and upgrade of law enforcement aircraft assets. The governor recommends $18.1 million all SGF for the purchase of 2 new helicopters, 1 multi-purpose single-engine airplane, and upgrade of FLIR forward-looking infrared radar on the 2012 Cessna 206 aircraft, and $800,000 in fiscal year 2022. Senate subcommittee recommendations concur with the governor. The subcommittee requests the Senate Ways and Means review the agency's request on aircraft replacement and upgrade and the funding source of that request. With that, I'll stand for questions. Senator McGinn.
So can someone tell me what's different in the aircraft purchases compared to last year? Did we learn anything more this year?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the major change is the source of funding moving from the State Highway Fund to the State General Fund.
Okay, but I thought we had issues with what type of aircraft that they were also purchasing last year.
I think the request, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Oops.
I think the request is the same, but we did have some discussions about what the type was. So the type remains a Caravan, which was requested last session, if I recall correctly. I think we had some discussion about whether that large of an aircraft was needed, and that perhaps a smaller aircraft that matches what they have in the fleet currently. I think it says here they have a 206, but and they look like the common 172, 192s, whatever.
Twin engine?
They're single engine aircraft. So those are a much smaller aircraft. Some of the discussion around why going with the Caravan over that was the adverse weather that they often need to fly in, as opposed to being, nice, bright, sunny days. They're often called upon to fly in weather that is at times severe or icy, and that the Caravan has more capabilities in that kind of weather scenario. So also payload capacity, things like that came up during those discussions last session, if I recall correctly. We could certainly go over it again. I don't think there's any problem with spending 15 minutes getting some information from the agency before we make any serious decisions here, but I will have a motion to amend this slightly today if the committee will have it.
Okay, so how come it doesn't, is the multipurpose single-engine airplane, is that the Caravan?
I believe so, yes.
So I think we should call it the Caravan. I mean, I'm a little more.
Yeah, I think we avoided calling out brands on it, like we're not calling it a Bell helicopter. I guess it could be an Airbus. We're not calling it a
Okay.
Caravan. I guess maybe Piper makes a equivalent, but
It's just that a single-engine airplane to me is like a 187.
yeah, I got you.
And a Caravan is a big plane with a big body on it. And
Yeah, it's a
does
much
lots
more-
of different things.
Much more
So,
sizable aircraft, you're right.
Okay, and then where will these be located?
So we have some information on that. Let me ask staff if we have that. I'm kind of curious to see that as well, but we changed out packets, as you may have noticed, and mine is not here with that information. But there, I believe that the locations that they would have the helicopters are Kansas City and Wichita, and then the fixed-wing aircraft, Hayes, just nod. Hayes, yeah, would be the primary location of that. Thank you.
I think similar to last year's request.
I don't think there's any change from last year as far as how this request was made. I think it really is just the source of funding being SGF as opposed to State Highway Fund in this one, though you've probably heard multiple requests in the past that have differed from this.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Petty.
Just following up on that conversation, I know that we haven't, well, I felt that we have encouraged a moving from the Bank of KDOT, and so this seems to be a move to support that, moving from the Bank of KDOT and taking this cost from there instead of, and then replacing it with SGF. So I'm just concerned about, I would like to see us continue to not be relying on the Bank of KDOT.
Thank you, Senator Petty. So the quote, Bank of KDOT references are typically referring to extraordinary transfers from the State Highway Fund. Those extraordinary transfers end in 2023. There are ordinary transfers, which we consider things that support the transportation system in the state of Kansas, and one of those ordinary transfers is the Kansas Highway Patrol. So that is why typically it's been a state highway fund ask, just to maintain the consistency of the highway patrol being funded through the state highway fund. So I don't think anyone will be accusing us of, taking from the Bank of KDOT when it comes to purchases for the highway patrol, which is one of the intended uses of the state highway fund.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe the amendment that Senator Clays says is coming will answer my question, but on the subcommittee recommendation that we review that, I'm just wondering if we want to review it on mega or omnibus, or when we think we might be either getting this 15-minute presentation so we can make this decision.
Senator Clays.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think maybe that would be helpful as a refresher, just to have some of the information behind where we are with this particular ask. It's pretty evident just in this discussion that our memory from last year is not super clear on this issue. The edits that I have aren't of a substantive nature to change the outcome of where we're heading with this. I think that it's important to have a Senate position on this as we go into conference with the House. And I can certainly make this motion at a later time if you'd like more information, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to change substantively what we do. So I'll leave that to you if you'd rather have it at a later time, or if you'd just like to do it now. And
Well, I think if you want to make the position, and then if the committee is not comfortable, we can push it off till later when we can have more information. Go ahead and make your motion.
I would.
Oh, sure, excuse me, 1 second. Senator Fagg had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He might be covering it before we get down here, but the thing that, when we look back at last year, they'd asked for 3, we gave them 1, the governor said none. So now we're back for 3, and I guess I'm lost on why we got to do 3, because I think our process was trying to spread this multi-million-dollar expenditure out so that they didn't all come 15 years from now, all have to be done. So just my comment on that.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's certainly a very large ask, Mr. Chairman, so I think we'll just deal with 2022 at this point, and I would make a motion that in 2022, we acquire 1 new helicopter with FLIR, require the sale of the Bell helicopter, and then also in 2022, purchase 1 new Caravan with a FLIR. And when I say the word Caravan, I'm meaning all the technical language that means the equivalent of one during that bidding process, and requiring the sale of the 1978 Cessna aircraft, and that the source of funds for consistency of the way that this agency is funded be the State Highway Fund. And that is only in 2022, and then omit any purchases or sales for 2023.
Senator, what about the flare units that they were needing?
Do you have those written out?
Well, I don't, but I had a note here that I think they needed a flare in Hayes and a flare in Topeka, the way they talked. They were not functioning.
I think we can deal with that in conference.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? We have a second? Senator Fagg seconds. Question, Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're just dealing with 22 at this point.
22.
Senator Hawk.
Just clarification, Senator Clays, and essentially I did look ahead. You're not adding another helicopter in 23 with another motion?
No, the current standing of the budget is that the subcommittee requests that Ways and Means review the agency's enhancement request for aircraft replacement and upgrade, and the funding source of this request in 23 as well, so we can revisit that at a later date. At this time, I'd like to deal with 22 with a helicopter and a Caravan or equivalent, and requiring the sale of 2 problematic assets, and then have that moved to the State Highway Fund as the source of funding.
So am I hearing you say you might consider at a later date doing that second helicopter?
I will absolutely consider that at a later date.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 800,000 for the forward-looking infrared radar, I feel like that's kind of important to update that one airplane with that. Then we'll have 2 of them, is my understanding, isn't it? Senator Clays,
Yes, I think the suggestion was wait and see what comes out of the House, and maybe this would be a negotiation tool.
gotcha. Thank you.
Senator Saltram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, is any of this aircraft being purchased from anyone in the state of Kansas, or where are they looking, or do you know?
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by in the state of Kansas. So Airbus and Bell both have a presence in the state of Kansas at some degree. I don't think either of the aircraft are built here when it comes to the helicopters. As far as the Cessna Caravan, I think there's probably more of a nexus here in Kansas for that than perhaps other aircraft, and that we could certainly look at being very specific about what aircraft is required to be purchased. But I think Caravan's been
I would just
repeated.
hope that they use their best efforts to purchase it through some form of representation through the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I think anytime we can purchase in Kansas, we want to make sure we're doing that, so. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move to 2023. I make a motion that we approve 2020, well, first we've got to approve 2022. Okay. I make a motion we approve 2022 with the adjustments made by the subcommittee on the aircraft. Seconded by Senator Clays. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then in 2023, I think that I would make a motion, we accept the way the subcommittee had concurred with the governor, and seconded by Senator Clays. 23, yes. Did you have a question in 23, Senator McGinn?
So we have the aircraft, 2022. I got the right one, yeah. So, but you didn't read the subcommittee adjustments? Am I reading the wrong thing? This has to do with law enforcement officers' pay metrics?
Right. This was on the recommendation of the pay. There's, the governor had put three. I'll let Senator Clays answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the governor proposes a 5% across the board, and that comes to approximately $3.6 million for this agency. We're putting proviso language that would require that be placed into the career progression plan. What we're attempting to prevent is, wage compaction, where perhaps one would front load all of those funds into the starting wage and then put us back into the problem that we had previously 5 or 6 years ago, where taking the upper management positions was not a financially beneficial move.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Other questions? See nothing? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the Adjutant General. The agency requests a revised estimate, $167.2 million, including $13.2 million SGF in fiscal year 2022. This is an all funds increase of $103.7 million and an SGF increase of $358,247 above the 2022 approved amount. The all funds increase is primarily attributed to receipts in the federal funds, $72.8 million, for expenditures associated with COVID-19 pandemic and other federally declared disasters. The agency revised estimates include 3 supplemental requests, including $22.8 million, including $2.4 million SGF for deferred maintenance and routine rehabilitation and repair of National Guard facilities, $805,626, and an increase of state disaster payments of $22 million. The agency's revised estimate includes 289 FTEs, which is an increase of 1 FTE position above 2022. The increase is due to the addition of a media projection technician position in the administrative program. Governor's recommends expenditures of $168.2 million, including $13.5 million SGF in 2022. This is an increase of $1.1 million, all from special revenue funds above the agency's 22 revised estimates. The governor recommends an increase of $1.1 million, all from special revenue funds for the Kansas Department of Emergency Management to update recovery plans with lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. These expenditures include $525,000 from the state emergency fund to provide state match for $525,000 from the Federal Emergency Management Performance Grant. The recommendation includes transferring the unspent balance of the state's emergency fund, $8.6 million, back to SGF. These funds were initially SGF monies approved by the State Finance Council for expenditures in response to COVID-19 pandemic. However, federal relief funds became available for this purpose. The governor recommends 289 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the agency's 2022 revised estimates. The Senate subcommittee concurs with the governor. In 2023, the agency requests $199.7 million, including $94.5 million SGF for fiscal year 2023. This is an all funds increase of $32.5 million and an SGF increase of $81 million above fiscal 2022. The increase is attributed to the agency's 11 enhancement requests totaling $108.1 million, including $86.8 million SGF. These enhancements primarily include deferred maintenance and routine rehabilitation and repair of the National Guard facilities, $41.8 million. Remodel of the State Defense Building, $21 million. State disaster payments of $20.2 million. A new armory in Hayes, $18.1 million. And the addition of 10.5 FTE positions, 812,596. At the Kansas Department of Emergency Management and the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center. The increase is partially offset by a decrease in expenditures from the federal funds for expenditures associated with COVID-19 pandemic and other federal declared disasters of $71.7 million. The agency requests 299.5 positions, which is an increase of 10.5 FTE positions from fiscal 2022. The revised estimates. The increase is due to the agency's enhancement request to add 8.5 FTE positions to KDEM and 2 FTE positions to the KIFC. The governor recommends expenditures totaling $157.4 million, including $52.3 million SGF for fiscal year 2023. This is an all funds decrease of $42.3 million and an SGF decrease of $42.2 million below the agency's fiscal 2023 request. The governor recommends enhancements for the State Defense Building remodel, a new armory in Hayes, state disaster payments, and increased rehabilitation and repair of armories. However, the recommendation includes only partial funding for deferred maintenance and additional FTE positions for KDEM and KIFC. The governor's recommendation also includes 294 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 5.5 FTE positions below the agency's 2023 request. The decrease is due to the governor's not recommending 4.5 FTE positions for KDEM and 1 FTE position for KIFC, which was part of the agency's enhancement request. The subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendations for 2023 with the following notation. Subcommittee requests the agency provide the Senate Committee on Ways and Means additional information regarding expenditures of $18.1 million for the new armory in Hayes in 2023, and including plans for the purchase of the land in the facility of the land of 2.1 and a facility of 16. So we'll be getting additional information on that before we finalize the budget. Questions? Senator McGinn.
Thank you. In that additional information, could somebody update me on armories in general? I thought we were getting rid of them rather than increasing them. So
I'm like you. I was surprised, but the armory in Hayes is like 60 years old, and it is it's in a floodplain, and it's also it's very small doors, very small, like offices and where they work on the trucks, the garage part. It's very outdated. So I would say that. So
would we have them? They don't have to do it today, but give us a one-sheet explanation about the future of armories in general and what they do still. I'm sure they still train in them. You know, I have an armory too in Newton, and I'll bet it's over 60 years old. I mean, it looks that way. But so it seemed like there was a new trend, and maybe I'm wrong, but so if I could just have some information on that, I appreciate it.
We will add that to the list, and when we get additional information on the Hayes one, we'll also get an update on facilities and all of them. Yeah, okay. Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does that go through the State Building Committee?
Yes, it does.
And do we have their recommendation?
The building committee did okay the recommendation for the Armory. Any other questions? Senator Hawk.
Just to clarify, could we get a map that shows where the armories are and a listing of their age and square footage? Just in
Well,
terms of that information.
we can add that to the list.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other items or questions? Seeing none, I make a motion, we approve the subcommittee report for the Adjutant General's Department for 22 and 23 with additions to the recommendations for 2023. We have a second by Senator Clays. Any other questions or? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any disapprovals? Motion carries. Next, we will move on to Human Services. Senator McGinn, State Hospitals and Intellectual Disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. This will not be as brief as our fee fund boards. This is our two hospitals. So I think some of this information is rather important. Okay. The agency's request a revised estimate of $60 million, including $23.5 million SGF. This is an increase of $3.1 million above the approved amount in 2021 legislature. The significant items are salary increases associated with executive directives. Included in the agency's revised estimate are increases associated with the executive directive numbers 21537 and 21538. Both hospitals have requested salary increases for the mental health developmental disability technician positions. In July and August of 2021, the governor issued 2 executive directives that effectively increased the salaries to $16 per hour. In FY 2022, the total cost for these salaries increases is $5.4 million, which the agencies were able to cover with excess federal funding for salary savings due to vacancy rates. This item will come up a little bit more, and I do have a little extra explanation for that as well. Contractual nursing staff included in the K&I budget is increase for contractual service staff. They have historically reported issues of staff turnover and relied on the contractual nursing staff to cover. Due to the ongoing COVID-19, the hospital has continued to face staffing issues related to COVID-19 outbreaks. And so this is a total increase associated with the contractual nursing is $1.1 million. However, this contractual staffing is covered by federal funds, which allows a decrease in SGF expenditures of $914,000 for 2022. A general increase in supplies included in the Parsons revised estimate are several general increases in utilities and other general supplies for hospital operations. According to the hospital, it saw a general increase in the cost of these supplies. For 21, the actuals, and therefore adjusted their budget request accordingly. The total increase was $513,000 and was primarily covered by the federal government. That gave us a decrease in SGF of $282,726. The revised estimate includes 914.7 FTEs in 2022, which is the same as 2021. Governor recommends the $60.5 million, including $23.5 million SGF for expenditures of 2022. decrease of 15,000 of SGS, less than 0.1% of the estimate, revised estimate. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending partisan supplemental request of $15,000 to begin a development of a crisis stabilization unit. Again, FTAs are the same, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation. And I'd like to continue, and then I want to discuss the employee turnover, and I think that will be consistent with both hospitals. So may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, the agency requests 61 million, 31 million.5 SGF, all funds increase of 472, 400 in SGF, or of 8.2 million above the 22 estimates. Significant items, enhancement to the continued salary increases. Both hospitals submitted enhancement requests to continue the salary increases associated with the executive directives. Agency found means to cover these expenditures in 2022. K&I utilized the increase of federal funds for the hospital received due to COVID-19. Parson utilized the savings it realized due to increased vacancy rates. Despite finding funds to cover these expenditures, the agencies anticipate requiring the SGF to increase to their base budget in the future. In the 23, the total cost of these salary increases is 5.5 million SGF. Decreased Title 19 funding, the FY23 request also includes decreased Title 19 for both agencies. Due to the COVID-19, the federal medical assistance percentage, FMAP, was temporarily increased to allow states to receive more of the FMAP money. This will end at the quarter when the federal COVID-19 funds expire, and I believe that says March, but I thought it was April of this year. But the analysts know better, so I should quit thinking. So anyway, that decrease is approximately 7.7 million, which is an offset in the increase of the SGF utilization for 2023. The request also includes 927.7 FTE positions, which is an increase of 13 FTEs. This is due to Parsons' enhancement request for behavioral health crisis unit at the hospital. Governor concurs with the agency's request for 23, and the subcommittee concurred with the recommendations for 23 and with the governor. So I'll answer any questions, but I do want to talk a little bit about this turnover briefly, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
I want to thank Senator Solentrop for asking for this information. One of the question was, can you give us a list of the different employee status, titles, et cetera, so that we could see the 0 to 6 months, 6 months to 12, 12 to 18, and see what kind of turnover we're looking at. And the MHDDT, which is Developmental Disability Technician, generally the lowest paid person, their turnover rate, if you look at, out of all the turnover rate, total 291, 230 was that category, turnover rate from 0 to 6 months. And those are the individuals that are now getting $16 an hour, but what was happening is you can go work at Amazon or McDonald's or wherever for $15 and it's not as hard at work. So certainly a problem in that area. And if anybody would like a copy of this, it's just very interesting, and I can give it to Nancy and have you guys have it in your packet if you would like. So certainly a problem. So with that, I will stand for questions for the state institutions for intellectual disabilities.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is their present staffing? I noticed the number in 22 was 914, and then they go to 927, but we reference in here a lot of vacancy rates and that. So what is their present staffing?
Think here. I'm trying to remember how they move that around. What's that? So that's 20 people. Okay, so their vacancy rate, excuse me, their vacancy rate is 20% for K&I, and for Parsons, it's 21.2%.
So about 20 people, is that what you're saying, then, correct?
Well, it's a percent, so
Percent
yeah. Of that number.
About 1,000 people, you
Yeah.
get 20%.
Yeah.
20 people.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed that we are relying now on SGF instead of federal funds for about, a tune of about $8 million from 22 to 23. So we're spending more SGF. So that's
Correct, but we have also received a lot of money from the federal money, and again, we have to look at the long-term expense of those kinds of things. And I think this is going to come up again on salaries in the next report that I give, more information. Can't give you all the information at once. It would make the next report exciting for me to read.
Other questions? Seeing none, Senator, if you want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the State Institution for Intellectual Disabilities for 22 and for 2023.
I have a motion, second by Senator Clays. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the state hospitals for mental health. Senator McGinn.
All right, thank you. The agency requests a revised estimate of $134 million, including $110 million for SGF for expenditures for 2022. The Lerner State Hospital, the revised estimate was $86.6 million, including $75.1 million, while OSH's revised estimate was $47.7 million, including $34.8 million SGF. Overall, the expenditures were increased by $17.1 million or $14.6 million above the 21 legislature. And because of that, those items were listed as funding for operation costs at Lerner State Hospital, which had several supplemental requests that pertained to additional costs associated with staffing coverage, food service at the hospital, and as part of the revised estimate. The food service at the hospital had to do with a change going from using corrections to another entity, so they are no longer together. So as the agency has historically indicated, it continues to rely on contractual staff and has found that COVID-19 has created more need for these services. Additionally, the estimate included an increase associated for Lerner State Hospital food service contract, so the agency relies on a third party to provide meals for its patients. A revised estimate contract increased by 62% would result in a total increase of $15 million for operational costs at Lerner State Hospital in 2022. Shift in category expenditures for Osawatomie staffing. Overall, Osawatomie's revised estimate does not increase significantly. However, there is a $2.4 million swap between salaries and wages, expenditures, and contractual services. As LSH and OSH relies on contractual nursing staff to provide direct service coverage for the hospital when there's a shortage of FTEs. The agency revised its budget to include additional funding for contractual staff as it anticipates an increased vacancy rate in 2022. This does not result in an overall expenditure increase for OSH in 22, but causes decreases in certain categories of the expenditure. Agency estimates 1425 FTE, which is a decrease of 4 FTEs in 2021. Government recommends $120 million, including $95 million SGF for expenditures in 22, decrease of $14 million SGF below the agency's 22 revised estimate. Decreases in the recommendation are primarily related to the governor not including several of the agency's supplemental requests, which includes the following operational costs at Lerner State Hospital, and let's see, and SGF to fund additional contractual nursing staff. LSH revised its food contract, which is 893,000 SGF. The governor's adopts this new estimate, LSH, anticipated increase for food service contract. This would result in a decrease of 13.5 million SGF. The governor didn't recommend the request for 552,000 for 18 safety security FTE for the sexual predator program. However, the governor recommendation does include funding for 2022. It does partial funding for 23, and would result in a decrease of 552,000 of SGF and 18 FTEs. And then Osawatomie's how do you say it? Myco House? Is that how you say it? Okay. Reapportionment or appropriation. The governor's recommendation does not include an additional 53,000 that was inadvertently lapsed in the appropriation for Osawatomie's sexual predator reintegration. This would result in a decrease of 53,000 SGF. The recommendation also includes 1,407 FTEs, which is a decrease of 18 positions under the 22. And that decrease is due to the governor not recommending the request for the safety and security positions. The subcommittee concurs with the governor in 2022. With the following notation. Lawrence State Hospital committee notes that the agency's supplemental and enhancement request increased funding for contractual nursing staff expenditures, request to provide more information on the estimate of those expenditures. Once the agency provides more information, the committee recommends that the Senate Ways and Means Committees consider the agency's supplemental and enhancement request for contractual nursing staff expenditures during its deliberations on the entire state budget. This is coming forward in the form of a GBA for $13 million for nursing staff, and it's because they're having to increase their contractual nursing staff expenditures. They're required to have somebody there at all times, and if they cannot fill the FTEs, they need more dollars for the contractual nursing. So that is 2022. I will move on to 2023. The agency requests $145 million, including $123 of SGF for the expenditures in 23. The revised estimate for Lawrence State Hospital is $93 million, including $83 for SGF, while the Osawatomie request is $51 million, including $39 million in SGF. The overall expenditures increased by 7.9% above the 2022. The agency requests include additional sexual predator treatment program services, and these requests include funding an additional unit as well as funding additional staff to assist in the growing population of the sexual predator unit. Population is continuing to grow and new participants appear to be increasingly aggressive. As such, the agency would like to increase its SPTP staff and services to account for this increasing population, which would result in 6.3 million SGF for the program in 23. Additional staff for the PSP at Lawrence State Hospital, which includes 1.4 million and 17 FTE positions for 23 to add additional staff to the psychiatric services program. Hospital reports that it has a wait list of 26 days during 2021. Agency indicates these positions are necessary to appropriately assess, treat, and supervise the discharged patients. The hospital's goal in increasing staff is to provide quicker services to individuals civilly committed in an attempt to reduce the wait time at Lawrence State Hospital. This would result in 1.4 million SGF for this program. Moratorium-related increases, Osawatomie's request includes 2 enhancement requests to assist lifting the moratorium on the voluntary admissions. The requests primarily relate to adding FTE positions to funding the staff at the building once the remodel has been concluded, and the addition of funding dedicated to social detox program to assist individuals with substance use disorders who are admitted to the hospital, which would be an increase of 2.4 on the SGF. Agency also requests 1572 FTEs, which is 147 above 22. Governor recommends 124 million, including 103 million SGF. This is a decrease of 20.2 million SGF below the agency's 23 request. The decrease in the governor's recommendation is primarily related to the governor not including several agency enhancements requests, including the following. The LSH enhancement requests to fund additional contractual nursing staff. So you can see that she denied, but I think it's coming back in a SGF, or I mean a GBA. And then the FTF positions for the psychiatric services program, the additional of the sexual predator program funding was denied. Significant items to the governor's recommendation partially offset the decreases. Include the following: the moratorium increases. The governor recommends the adoption of the Osawatomie 2 enhancement requests to assist in lifting the moratorium. For the voluntary admissions, this request add FTE positions and funding to the staff for the building, in addition to a social detox program, which would result in an increase of 3,000 SGF. Due to a technical correction of the Osawatomie request in 23. Operational upgrade costs for Larned State. The recommendation adopts several enhancements for operational costs at the hospital. This includes the $893,000 anticipated increase in the new food services contract. The request was for 1.4 million, but due to subsequent budget submission, the contract estimate has now been lowered. And it includes Larned wanting to request upgrades to the phone system at the hospital, as well as FTEs for the state security program, but does not result in an increase in expenditures. Salary increases, the recommendation also includes funding associated with the governor's executive directives, in order to increase salaries for direct care staff to assist staff retention issues. Recommendation includes 1.5 SGF. Originally, LSH included an enhancement request to fund the increases. This would result in total increase of 1.2 million of SGF. Recommendation also includes 1459 FTEs, which is a decrease of 113 FDEs. The subcommittee concurs with the governor with the following adjustments. This committee notes that the agency's supplemental enhancement request for increased funding for contractual nursing staff expenditures and requests for the agency to provide more information on the estimate of those expenditures. Once the agency provides the information, the committee recommends that the Ways and Means consider the agency's supplemental and enhancement request before the contractual nursing staff expenditures during its deliberations on the entire state budget. The Osawatomie State Building, delete the 993,000 SGF and 5 FTEs, not to recommend the agency's social detox program. Committee notes that the agency's enhancement requests to establish a new program and requests the agency to provide more information on statewide detox programs overseen by the Department of Aging and Services. So once that comes back, then we can consider that for the whole body, and I would suggest that that be done at omnibus and not when we package. The concern here was what other programs, detox programs, are in the community. So jails bring them in and so they could put them in a detox and then decide whether they go home or not. So just need to find out what other services are available in the area rather than start a new program. I'll sit for questions.
Questions for Senator McGinn? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this may be for later on the contractual nursing, trying to get a handle on how much more a contract nurse gets per hour than a regular nurse, and I think it's, I don't know, $50, $60 more an hour, not sure if we know that, and then I wonder what percent of our nursing hours are filled by contract nurses, and if there's some other way to solve that problem as opposed to having to hire contract nurses. So did we discuss that? Do we have a?
Mr. Chairman, can the secretary come up and answer those questions?
Sure, if she'd like, that'd be great. Or somebody from your staff is fine. That'd be fine. Just state your name, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Scott Bruner. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Hospitals and Facilities. Maybe not in the order that you asked the question, Senator Hawk. The contract price for staff for agency nurses is somewhere between 4 and 5 times what we pay nurses directly. How much of that actually flows back to the nurse and their wages? It isn't the full amount. If we're paying $150 or $170 an hour to the staffing agency, the nurse is getting some of that, but not all of it. But our cost is 4 to 5 times higher as the hospital. In terms of total number of hours that are covered by agency nurses, I want to check for sure, but we're, depending on the day, it could be up to half of the nursing staff or contractors. But I'll get you the exact number before you finish probably not your deliberations on this, but before you complete for the agency or for the entire budget. And it's a little higher at Larned than it is at Osawatomie, but it's still a good share of it would be very difficult to operate either hospital without the agency staff that are willing to work.
Senator Alley.
Mr. Chair, so I'm looking at the total number of agency requests for FTE, and I've got the governor recommends 1,460 approximately. And if you're telling me that half of those are contract?
Senator, that number represents our total staff. So nursing and direct care would make up, I'm guessing, but it's 50 to 60% of that total number. And we are running at Larned the vacancy rates close to 40%. Actually, it's pretty close to 40% on both campuses. So 40% of those 1,400 positions are vacant right now.
So you've got 1,400 positions requested, and you're 40% vacant, is that right?
On average, yes.
On average?
Between the two campuses, yes.
And those positions are funded?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're making that up with contract nurses or contract employees as you can?
As much as possible, yes.
And is that at both locations?
It's a little higher percentage at Larned than Osawatomie, but the dynamic's the same on both campuses.
Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just looking over the governor does not recommend Lawrence State Hospital request for $500,000 for 18 safety and security FTEs. My question to you is how many safety and security officers do you have now?
I need one other. Apologize for not bringing it up with me. At Larned, we have 92 safety and security officer positions earlier. So the week of February 2nd, 62 of those were filled. And that may have changed last week, but not significantly. So we've got 62 filled positions. I'm sorry, that would be the direct answer to your question. Safety and security positions.
It seems like a lot of new people requesting. There's either a big problem there or something of that issue. You might comment on that.
I'll try. Senator, the request was to, as we looked at the patient mix and severity of behaviors that we see on, particularly on the psychiatric services program and the state security hospital side, one of our approaches to keep staff safe is to increase, so the mix of a unit in terms of staffing are the mental health disability techs, the kind of direct care workers, nurses, RNs or LPNs, and then sometimes safety and security if there's an incident on the unit. So we're asking nurses and essentially direct care staff like a CNA in a nursing facility to manage very disruptive, behaviorally challenged individuals. And sometimes staff get injured or other patients get injured. One way to disrupt that cycle is to have a different mix of people on the units, including more safety and security that could be available to help manage as those behaviors come up. And they're trained a little differently in security holds and using some of the other equipment that we have to prevent disruption. But the intent is to increase the ratio, I guess, of safety and security to the direct care staff, not to reduce anything, but to have a stronger security presence on units because of the kinds of patients that we're serving.
One question I'd have is, do you keep track of staff that you've lost because of the mandates and masking? Do you got any idea?
I'm not aware. We do ask in exit interviews if there's a reason why people are leaving. I don't remember seeing any specific reference to masking. I do know there's one employee, at least one example where that did come up as it got elevated to me, but one at one or two as at most, I think, over the.
Did you require a vaccination to all employees?
The governor yesterday released an executive directive giving us instructions on how to implement the vaccine mandate. So all Larned and Osawatomie, because they're Medicare and Medicaid providers, have to comply with that, with the vaccine mandate. We're just starting to implement that now. We have been facilitating people to get vaccinated on campus if they've wanted to. We have some federal reporting that we have to do, so we have been verifying if people are vaccinated because we did the vaccination, so we know, or if they've told us on their own. We've been reporting that, but there hasn't been a mandate that we've been implementing before we're starting the process today.
So now that you're starting, do you anticipate losing some more help?
I don't know. It's certainly a possibility. The way the executive directive describes how we are to implement the vaccine mandate is to either vaccinate people ourselves, which we can do, ask them if they've been vaccinated and take their self-attestation of vaccination, and that would count. You can also get a religious exemption or a medical exemption. So after you kind of take all the paths that people can meet the qualification, I don't think there'll be a lot of folks left, but there could be some, and we'll address that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just want to comment that most of the hospitals did very good during the COVID crisis time as far as keeping their employees and their patients safe. And not very many people got sick. One hospital. Okay. I just leave it there.
We've had a lot of people catch COVID-19 and be diagnosed with it. We haven't had a lot of severe illness. We have very few, not zero, but very few deaths from staff or patients.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you. And this complying with CMS guidelines because of the federal funding, what kind of financial impact would it have if we weren't complying with CMS guidelines?
The highest level risk is we would lose our certification as a Medicare or Medicaid provider, which would mean CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services could cancel our provider contracts and we wouldn't be able to bill Medicaid or Medicare for any of the services we provide. And that's a $40 to $50 million loss of federal share annually.
Other questions?
Just one more comment.
Senator McGinn.
Scott, did you produce this, the one about the turnover? Could you guys just, I've marked mine up, could you just send that to the rest of the committee?
Be happy to.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Senator McGinn, if you'd like to make your motion.
I make a motion.
Yes. State hospitals and mental health.
I make a motion to approve the state institution for mental health for 2022 and 2023.
Second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I know we're running late, committee, but we'd like to do this hearing on the payment for the 2 bonds that we propose paying off early. And so let's go ahead and open the hearing on Senate Bill 443, making appropriations to the Department of Administration for fiscal year 2022 for the purpose of legally defeasing or cashing redeeming certain bonds for the first optional redemption date. We'll start out with staff overview. Stephen Wu.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Stephen Wu, Senior Fiscal Analyst with Legislative Research. I'm going to keep this pretty quick. This bill just pays off 2 bonds early. It pays off Series 2015A, which includes the debt service for the KU Medical Center Education Building, includes some debt service for John Redmond Reservoir, also has some refunding bonds with it. It also would also pay off another bond early, 2015G. That is primarily the debt service for the state's portion of NBAF. Combined, in total, it's about $332.2 million. There is no fiscal note attached with it, although this item is included in the governor's recommendation. This bill just separates that out into a distinct bill. I would also note that Jim McMurray from the Kansas Development Finance Authority, as well as Budget Director Adam Profit, are with us in the audience today if the committee has any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there any questions for Stephen? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know what that saves us in general fund payments on a yearly basis?
Yeah, if you remember back to when Director Profit presented the governor's budget recommendation, during that report indicated that, so for 2015A, it would save about $27.8 million in debt service for 23 and about $25.9 million in debt service versus the original payment schedule. And for the 2015G NBAF, that would save about $17.4 million SGF in debt service over the next 13 years, as well as $54.6 million SGF as compared to the original payment schedule.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions? Senator Clays.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other individuals testifying on this bill and it being of such a non-controversial nature, would you consider working the bill today?
Committee, Senator McGinn.
I just have a question. How come there's no proponents for the bill?
It was proposed in the governor's budget, and the budget secretary had, talked about it in our original budget overview with the House.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
any other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have missed this. What's the rate on these 2?
Would need to double check on that. Do you have any? I might turn the mic over to Jim McMurray, if it's okay with the committee.
Jim, please state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jim McMurray from the Kansas Development Finance Authority. Most of the coupons, almost all the coupons on the Series 2015A and 2015G bonds are 5% coupons.
Any other questions for Jim? Seeing none, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Stephen. Senator Clays?
Well, without objection, I would move the committee recommend favorably Senate Bill 443 for passage.
We have a second. Senator Fagg? Any other questions or discussion? Senator Fagg?
You know, as we do the 5% stuff, I'm sitting here thinking about capers at 7.75% that they factor into their thing. So I'm just throwing that out for comment. I like getting off the fives, but that thought crosses my mind.
Senator Hawk?
Is this something that could be consent agenda?
We thought it might be, but I think we'll just pass it out.
It's fine with me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Committee, that finishes our work for today. Thank you. Sorry we ran a little over. We are adjourned.